This happened in the summer of 2010 when I was just entering my teenage years. My family took a trip to a really nice hotel in the city. I can't really remember why we decided to take the trip, but I remember a lot of family friends coming with and staying in adjacent rooms. I've never asked my parents, and it's not really important to the story. To preface, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat and always have been. I'm a pretty skinny, fragile kid, so I get spooked pretty easily, even now. This, however, was almost definitely not me freaking myself out like I normally did. Looking back, I'm incredibly lucky I trusted my instincts. This hotel had a strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor, not the bottom floor, which I found strange. To access the lobby, you had to use the elevator. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. This information would have been nice before everything happened, as you'll find out. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Every floor was lined with a balcony, and you could look down into the lobby and cafe area from your floor. Essentially, if you are walking to your room, you could be seen from anyone that was on your floor if they just stepped out of the room and looked around. I was always afraid I would fall over the balcony and sail down 8 stories to my death, but they were high enough to a point where I wasn't concerned for my safety. The first day was nice. My friends and I hung out and played cards all day, or we watched whatever was on TV. At night, we would explore the halls of the hotel and tell each other ghost stories. It was a really fun time, even though I didn't fully understand why we were there. On the 3rd day, though, things got strange fast. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside my door. Now, because of the hotel's design I mentioned, sounds from the lobby would echo all the way up to the top of the building. So when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over the balcony to see what the commotion was about. I saw a girl laying on the ground, eggs and milk splattered everywhere around her. And people were rushing to help her, and I heard a couple of people telling each other to call 911. It seemed like the girl was unconscious. Maybe she had passed out or something. I scanned the lobby and saw that my family and a couple of my friends were in the lobby getting breakfast, all staring at the event in front of them. I decided that I would rush down to meet them to find out what had happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my floor, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. Not a big deal. I descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. I took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th floor, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now at this point, I probably should have turned back, but I continued down because I was tired and I didn't want to climb back up. There were some weird side hallways that went into pitch black areas with a bunch of piping and wiring, and though I was curious to explore, I passed them by. I quickly hit the bottom floor, a dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete flooring. In front of me was a set of double doors. I hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way to get back to the lobby, so I opened them and entered. Behind the doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably the size of a smaller basketball stadium. The only light coming in was from the stairwell behind me, so I wasn't really able to see much. Stairs were stacked and covered in plastic, tables lined the wall, and in the distance, I thought I could see boxes stacked in line against the wall as well. It was probably the storage room of the hotel. I looked around and saw an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. I closed the door to the stairwell and began to walk in the dim light. The room was super muggy and dusty, and it seemed like nobody had been down there for a long time. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed it was a little bigger than the elevators in the lobby and other floors. I pressed the up button, but got no response. There was a card swiper next to the button. It must have been for employees only, I thought, and I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I gave it a tug. Locked, of course. This is when things started to hit me, and I realized that I was stuck in the dark, dusty basement of a hotel. I didn't have a phone because my parents wouldn't let me get one until I graduated middle school, so I couldn't call anyone. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began freaking out, believing that nobody was going to look for me. I searched around the warehouse, looking for other ways out. Some areas of the place were better lit than others, so I looked around in areas that I could see first before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but it happened to be locked as well. I began to cry, scared that nobody would ever find me in this basement. I swear that it felt like hours, but I think only a handful of minutes passed before the door creaked open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, rather the second door that I had found. A slim, middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. Now, if this was a 21-year-old me seeing this, I would be very confused as to why this guy was wearing a lab coat in a hotel. I was only 12 or 13 at the time, so I was immediately relieved at the sight of an adult who looked smart. I approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked surprised to see me, as you would expect. "What are you doing down here?" he yelled. "I got lost on my way down to the lobby and I've been locked in here. Do you have a key?" I was shaking, eager to get out of there. He didn't answer my key question, and instead he said, "I know a way out of here, follow me." He began to walk towards the doors of the stairwell and I followed, relieved that someone had finally come to save me. We approached the doors and I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. "Isn't it right here?" I asked him. I'll never forget the look in his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though it was dim, I could see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses. "No, this way," he said sternly. I continued to follow him, but I was now nervous myself. We had passed the door to the stairs and we were now headed towards a darker side of the basement, away from the elevators. He looked like he had no clue where he was leading me, as he kept checking around him, almost as if he was taking in his surroundings for the first time. We turned a corner and began walking towards the boxes, a dead end. I immediately froze, realizing that something was very, very wrong. This guy had no idea where he was going, nor did he appear to work at the hotel. I said, my voice shaking, "Okay, where are we going?" He turned and said, "This way, just follow me." I knew that there were no doors by those boxes. I had checked there first after I had found out the stairwell door was locked. I wanted to thank whatever God is up there for gifting me with the idea that I had next. I started yelling as loud as I could. I yelled so loud that I gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me. "What are you doing? Be quiet." I continued to yell. I don't even remember how long I was yelling. Finally, the man snapped and began quickly walking towards me. I went in a full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping to God they would somehow be magically open. He didn't run after me. He walked sternly behind me, muttering things like "stupid" and other kind of compliments. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through, my savior, a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation, me and some random guy in a lab coat at a locked basement, and immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was, and I said I had no idea, that he had come in through the door on the other side of the room, and I pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement, and quietly so that I wouldn't hear, he said, "This man came from outside, get security," or something like that. The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he was simply looking for a bathroom. The janitor clearly wasn't buying it, and he kept saying things like, "Wait till security gets here and talk to them about it." I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in what was happening, confused out of my mind. Eventually, an employee from the front desk arrived and took me back to the steps of the lobby, where I met with my family, who surprisingly had no idea I was missing. I told them the story, crying and shaking, and they hugged me tightly, thanking the employee over and over again for their help. I never got to thank that janitor though. Looking back now, I have absolutely no clue what that man was doing in the basement. I don't have any information as to what happens afterwards or who he was. I know for a fact that the incident with the girl in the lobby was unrelated. Something about low blood sugar. Not sure. I've thought about that day a lot, and the only explanation I can put together is that the door that I had found in the basement lead to the streets of the city, where he must have wandered from. I have no clue what his intentions were, why he was wearing the lab coat, or why he chose to pretend to know a way out. To be frank, this could have just been a huge misunderstanding of some sort, and I just chose a really bad time to get lost. But all I know for sure is if I hadn't screamed my lungs out, I might not have been telling this story the same way, or at all. So, a strange man in a lab coat wandering around a dark, dusty hotel basement. Let's not meet. I've had my fair share of creepy people throughout my life. Bucharest is a city where things like this rarely happened, so just take it from me, I had bad luck. First of all, let me just say that I'm not your average scaredy cat dude who likes it when someone stares at them for too long, unlike I've seen some posters here do. I'm also not gonna hide under my bed if my house gets broken into. You better believe I'll stomp their butts with no regards for my own safety. And putting being a keyboard warrior aside, there have been a few moments that I've had with total strangers that have been scarring, genuinely terrifying moments. I'm going to be talking about the most messed up situation that I have ever been in my life, and hope to any god out there that it never happens again. The incident happened 4 years ago before New Year's Eve. I was 18 at the time, and I had finished high school in the summer, and with no activity and nothing else to do, I decided to look for something I could do part-time with my limited skill sets and talents. The only things that I was remotely good at was playing video games and boxing. My mom found out this casting job in a newspaper article, back when she didn't know how to browse the internet, and she called and set up a meeting without really talking to me about it. I decided to play along since I was searching for something anyway, and casting in some shows seemed like an awesome choice. I'm 6'1" and I was skinny at the time, so I figured they could make me wear stuff like a clothing model. Needless to say, my naivety got the best of me, and I didn't realize things did not work that way. I went to the casting studio and the place was a total wreck. It was in some rundown building at the edge of the city. No windows, the bricks in the wall were cracked, and the withering vegetation was getting a hold of the place. It was also strange that there were no people around, but I figured this is the city's edge and all, then it should be a normal sight. I realized that there was no front door, so I went down some stairway on the far end of the building, which led me to a rotted wooden door. There was no handle or anything, so I didn't even know if I should push or try to pull it with the tip of my finger somehow. I decided that it must be the wrong place, so I called the number which my mom provided me with, and somebody answered. It was, well, she said that she was a woman, but I thought she was a man at first. She had a very low-pitched voice. She was very sweet and patient with me, and told me that this is indeed the building that I should go into, and that I should try to hold the door and push it up a bit. and then pull it towards me slowly so it wouldn't break from the hinges. And not to be afraid when I come inside because it's going to be pitch black. Apparently there's no electricity in that area, so I would just need to go forward until I feel another door. And that'll take me to another hallway which is completely lit up and take me to their office. Now hold up. What kind of insane person do you think I am to do this? I watched way too many horror movies to know this is all kinds of bad. The lady on the other side gave me a brief explanation on why the office was like this. Apparently, this was an apartment complex built in the 60s, but it got really wrecked after the '77 earthquake, which killed quite a few people because some of the pillars on the second floor were unstable beforehand. So they had to close it and no one's really done anything with it since. Since this casting company's budget was really low, they couldn't afford to have a nice looking office and to be in a good looking place, or at least a safe one. If you're having trouble with logic here, they were her words and not mine. One thing that I found sketchy is that somewhere in this conversation, she said, "You're alone, yeah?" I thought it was a bit strange, as if she could see me somehow. Her story seemed legit though. I closed the call, opened the rotting door, and sure enough, darkness. I should point out that when I pulled the door to me, there was a chair in front of it, probably to block it from collapsing inward as it apparently swung both ways because of its state of decay. I activated my phone flashlight to look around and it was really empty. Just a few chairs in the corner, and a white ragged and dirty looking tarp on the ground next to them. The door in the front had the same aspect of rotting wood. I figured that they would at least renovate that one to make it look more appealing. I pushed the door gently and it opens with a very loud creak. I think I should have pulled it. But this one didn't have a handle as well. Everything was still dark. I started questioning the system that they use and the fact that they're not professional. The lady told me that this hallway would be lit up, yet it wasn't. With my phone flashlight still on, I scanned the room for clues as to where the office might be. I know how this must seem to you listening to this. How did I not pick up on this incredibly sketchy situation? I'm just used to this. In the past, me and my parents didn't have light sources in our backyard, so whenever I needed to get something from the pantry, which also did not have a light source, I would do so in total darkness. This whole thing was getting on my nerves, so I deactivated my flashlight and decided to call the phone number again. As soon as I put my phone on my ear and the light it emitted went out, I heard a loud creak behind me, the sound of the rotting door that I pushed out earlier getting put back into place. I jumped at the sound and let out a sharp yell. I instinctively put my phone out, but the light the dial screen was letting out was too weak to see in front of me. "Hello?" I asked in a worried voice. No response. But in a second, I could hear the dial tone from my phone and hear a Nokia ringtone, the piano one, from the other side of the room where the door had been closed. I stay silent for a moment and the ringing stops. I have never been more horrified in my life. I crouched down and started moving along the wall to my left, as quickly and quietly as possible. I hear very quiet footsteps coming from my right, but I couldn't tell if they were coming toward me. I formulated a very basic escape plan in an instant. I had a general idea of where the door was, and the footsteps seemed to be directionless. I took 2 coins of 50 bani out of my back pocket and threw them at the other side of the room, and then I booked it. I pushed on the edge of the door at first because I ran away way too fast and had no idea where the door was exactly, and then I pushed against it to get out of the room. I tripped because I expected no resistance, yet a chair was blocking the other side. I heard scampered footsteps behind me and slight grunts. I get up and run away in the dark room with no regards to what I may hit on my path. I just knew the exit would be right in front of me. Sure enough, I hit another chair on the way, the one that I found blocking the door at the entrance, and it propelled me so hard that I bashed the door and knocked it off its hinges. I opened my eyes and I was outside, so my first instinct was screaming for help at the top of my lungs. I looked at the building and finally see him. A tall, overweight man, probably around 300 pounds, carrying a cloth in one of his hands. He was wearing a white tank top and jeans or sweatpants. I really couldn't be bothered to notice at the time. The expression on his face was one of pure anger. I scampered about and ran up the stairs as quickly as I could, and then turned right to go into town. I ran for about 3 or 4 minutes at full speed, not stopping for anything, until I finally reached the main street and I saw a lot of cars again. I was still in a panicked state, so I beelined it for the nearest taxi and told him to take me the heck home. I called my mom when I was halfway home and told her everything that just happened. She felt sick to her stomach and started crying that she put me in a situation that I might have died. Later that day, I filed a report to our nearest police station and they sent a dispatch there. We were informed that they found traces of a few blunts which had cannabis sativa and a double-edged razor on the ground. They also found a broken Nokia flip phone in the dirt outside. My parents told the police that if they found out anything else, to please contact them. This has left me with some serious issues, as I know I feel very anxious whenever I go to a job interview. I only feel relatively safe if the location is in a very public place, and the interview is at rush hour. One man did this to me. So kids, stay safe and remember, your martial arts training doesn't mean crap when you're scared out of your mind.